Have you ever heard about a witch who could summon the dead? Sounds spooky, right? Let me introduce you to one of the most mysterious figures from the Bible, the Witch of Endor. Her story is filled with magic, mystery, and a powerful lesson about fate and choices. In this video, we'll explore who the Witch of Endor was and dive into the events that made her famous. We'll also look at the historical and cultural background of her story and discuss the different moral and spiritual lessons we can learn from Saul's encounter with her. So prepare for an exciting journey into the past as we unravel the secrets of the Witch of Endor. Unusual movements. To understand the story of the Witch of Endor, we first need to look at the unusual military movements of the Philistines. Typically, the Philistines lived in the southwest region of Israel near present-day Gaza. They were a constant thorn in the side of the Israelites, often engaging in battles and skirmishes. But something significant happened that made the Philistines push far north into the valley of Jezreel. The valley of Jezreel, located in northern Israel, was not a typical battleground for the Philistines. This fertile strategic valley was usually free from Philistine influence. However, in 1 Samuel 28, we see that the Philistines had gathered their forces and advanced into this area, creating a dire situation for the Israelites. This unexpected move raised the stakes significantly, as the Philistines were now threatening the heartland of Israel, far from their usual territory. The Bible tells us in verse 4, "The Philistines assembled and came and set up camp at Shunem, while Saul gathered all Israel and set up camp at Gilboa." The Philistines' presence in Shunem, north of their typical domain, was a clear sign that they were preparing for a major confrontation. This unusual geographical movement set the stage for a critical and desperate moment in King Saul's life. Saul's desperation. Facing the imminent threat of a Philistine invasion, King Saul found himself in a state of panic and uncertainty. The fear of losing his kingdom and the lives of his people weighed heavily on him. Saul's desperation was compounded by the fact that he felt abandoned by God. According to verse 6, he inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him by dreams or Urim or prophets. As Saul confronted this dire situation, he sought guidance from God. The silence from God reflected Saul's fractured relationship with him. Desperate for answers and feeling abandoned, Saul made the fateful decision to consult a medium, the Witch of Endor. With no guidance from God and the Philistine army closing in, Saul was driven to take extreme measures. His fear and desperation led him to seek out the Witch of Endor, hoping she could provide the answers he so desperately needed. This decision marked a turning point in Saul's story and set the stage for his encounter with the mysterious witch. In seeking the witch, Saul crossed a line he had previously drawn himself. Earlier in his reign, Saul had expelled all mediums and spiritists from the land as commanded by God. In his profound desperation, Saul resorted to consulting one of these condemned individuals, highlighting the gravity of his despair and the extreme circumstances he faced. Forbidden practices. The Bible condemns necromancy and consulting mediums. Leviticus 19, verse 31 warns, "Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them." Similarly, Deuteronomy 18, verses 10 through 12, clearly forbids these practices, stating, "Let no one be found among you who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells, or who is a medium or spiritist, or who consults with the dead." Despite these clear prohibitions, the Witch of Endor was still practicing in secret. Her fear of being exposed indicates that, although banned, such practices continued to exist underground. Saul's encounter with the Witch of Endor. Saul's journey to the witch is fraught with irony and peril. He had previously banished all mediums and spiritists from the land, enforcing a strict adherence to the laws of God. Yet now, in his moment of crisis, he seeks out the very practices he had condemned. Saul's awareness of the forbidden nature of the actions only intensifies the gravity of the situation. Disguising himself, Saul went to see the Witch of Endor under the cover of night. He arrives at the witch's door, accompanied by 2 trusted men, and pleads with her to summon the spirit of the prophet Samuel. When Saul approached her, she was initially afraid, saying, Surely you know what Saul has done. He has cut off the mediums and spiritists from the land. Why have you set a trap for my life to bring about my death? 1 Samuel 28, verse 9. This shows that even though Samuel banned these practices, his desperation led him to seek out the thing he had outlawed. The witch, cautious and suspicious, initially refuses. She fears a trap, knowing the deadly consequences of practicing her craft. But Saul, still in disguise, swears to her that no harm will come to her. Reluctantly, she agrees to perform the ritual. She begins her incantations, expecting the usual deception that her clients seek. However, what happens next is beyond anything she has experienced before. As the ritual proceeds, a figure begins to materialize. The witch's eyes widen in shock and fear as she realizes that a true spirit has been summoned. This is not the usual illusion she conjures for her clients. This is a genuine encounter with the supernatural. She saw a divine being coming up, who, upon emergence, was identified as Prophet Samuel. The spirit of Samuel emerges, and the witch, recognizing Saul through the intensity of the moment, cries out in fear. She has unwittingly become an avenue for a real divine intervention. This encounter marked a tragic turning point. Samuel's prophecy came true, and Saul's downfall was complete. The story is a strong lesson about the consequences of going out of divine guidance and seeking forbidden knowledge. The appearance of Samuel's spirit is described with a term that resonates with profound significance, Elohim. While often translated as spirit, the word literally means gods in Hebrew, implying the presence of something immensely powerful and otherworldly. This is no ordinary ghostly apparition. It is a moment charged with divine energy, a supernatural event that transcends the boundaries of the mundane world. Samuel's spirit rises from the earth, commanding an aura of authority and solemnity. His presence alone is enough to send shivers down the spine of anyone who witnesses it. It is his message that delivers the actual blow. With a voice that echoes with the weight of the divine, Samuel rebukes Saul. He reminds the king of his disobedience to God, of his failure to carry out the divine commands. Samuel's words are stern and unyielding, reflecting the serious consequences awaiting Saul. The spirit of Samuel foretells a grim future for Saul. He prophesies the defeat of Israel at the hands of the Philistines, the death of Saul and his sons, and the transfer of the kingdom to David. In Samuel's words, "You and your sons will join me where I am tomorrow." The prophecy is a harsh reminder of the price of disobedience. Saul's decision to seek out the witch and engage in forbidden practices sealed his fate. Just as Samuel had prophesied, Saul and his sons met a grisly end the next day during the battle, and Israel was fatally conquered in the war. The encounter with Samuel's spirit is a moment of reckoning, a divine judgment that underscores the severe consequences of straying from the path of righteousness. In this haunting and profound episode, the Witch of Endor becomes an unwitting participant in a divine drama. Saul's desperation, the witch's shock, and Samuel's grave pronouncement intertwine to create a narrative that echoes through the ages. It is a story of disobedience and its dire repercussions. Speaking of the power of the divine, and a chilling reminder of the thin veil that separates the earthly from the new supernatural. Theological and moral lessons. The story of Saul and the Witch of Endor is rich with theological and moral teachings. At its core, it speaks of God's sovereignty. God holds the ultimate authority and control over everything. This narrative highlights the importance of seeking guidance through authorized means, such as prayer, scripture, and the prophets, rather than through forbidden practices. It serves as a warning against turning to the occult. By seeking the witch's help, Saul steps outside of the boundaries set by God. This desperation leads to severe repercussions, illustrating the dangers and consequences of disobedience. The story reminds us that looking for answers in the wrong places can have dire effects on our lives. Spiritual realities. The Bible treats mediums and spiritists as real and dangerous, which is why such practices are strictly forbidden in Scripture. This story reinforces the belief that engaging with the occult isn't just harmless fun. It's a serious matter with spiritual ramifications. Moreover, this story reminds us of the ongoing spiritual warfare involving believers. It emphasizes the need for spiritual discernment, the ability to distinguish between what is of God and what is not. By adhering to God's guidance and avoiding forbidden practices, believers can overcome the spiritual battles they face with wisdom and integrity. So far, we have discussed the Witch of Endor, her encounter with King Saul, and what happened to Saul after that. We've seen how the chilling prophecy Samuel gave Saul came to pass the very next day. In the battle against the Philistines on Mount Gilboa, Saul's sons were killed, and Saul, severely wounded, took his own life to avoid capture. 1 Samuel 31, verses 1-4. The Israelites were defeated, and the Philistines overtook their territories just as Samuel had foretold. Saul's story reminds us about the importance of obedience to the divine guidance, the danger of desperation, the consequences of seeking forbidden knowledge, and the reality of God's judgment. God's silence towards Saul was not an absence of his presence, but a manifestation of judgment. This shows us that our actions have consequences that can span the length of our lives, even up to death. As we draw the curtains here, please leave your thoughts in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video for others to see. God bless.